So now in developing a genogram, what we are trying to do is we are interviewing people and we're trying to get the structure and the dynamics of the family. And in doing this, we're going to do this visually because it'll communicate a lot of information, and it's something that you can do along with your clients. Now, in order to do this, we have some symbols that we can use. And as you can see, there are symbols for gender, name and date of birth, and other information. There are other symbols that are here, but we are going to start here. And so now what we're doing is we can first depict the gender identities of all the people who are in the family. And so we want to do that by essentially drawing that out. So if we start off, we're going to start off with this fictitious family in which we have a dad who was married at one point to a woman who is now in a relationship with another woman. The way that we depict those relationships is through lines. And so you'll see this like the marriage. You have here a line here showing that they're married, but we know that they got divorced. So then we're going to put two lines here. This right here shows us that the man and woman were married, but they got divorced. And then we put another line here to show that these two women are now married. And so what we've done is, if you look back at these, we've now created the basic structure of the family. We have the dad who's married to his wife, and then they got divorced, and now these two women are married. Now, what we also want to do is depict things like kids. So now, in order to do that, what we do is we go and we use other symbols. And here's a list of symbols for children. So the symbols for children, the first thing to know is that you start from the oldest and you go to the youngest from left to right. So that this way, as you're reading the genogram, you understand who is the oldest and who is not. You also include things like biological children, stillbirth, miscarriage, abortions, twins, adoptions, and if there's any like insemination or IVS. So what we're going to do now is go back to our fictitious family and we're going to put in the kids. So now these people had two kids. They had a boy who's the oldest and a girl who is the youngest. And in this relationship, they adopted another little boy. And so we want to include that. And so we put the line to show that there's a relationship and a dotted line to show that there is an adoption. Now what we also want to do in this is put in some of the ages. So we know roughly how old people are. So we have this person is 32, this person is 31, and this person is 31. So now what we know is that this father of these two kids is 32, mom is 31, her girlfriend and wife is actually 31 also. So we'll do the same things for the kids. And so now the boy is 10, the little girl is 8, and this boy is also 10. So now what we have is a basic structure of the family, and we have some understanding of the relationships between people. But now this is not the end of the genogram, because what we want to do is we want to indicate some of the relationships between people, or the dynamics. And so in order to do that, we have additional symbols that we use. For example, we have essentially the idea of connected, which is a straight line. We have a hostile relationship, which is kind of a squiggly line. A fused, which is where you can't necessarily see the difference between family members. They're kind of fused together, so what one feels, the other feels. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in a little bit of the relationships, okay? And so we are going to show that this relationship here is strong. They're connected. They're working together. And we are going to show that essentially there is a close relationship between these two kids, which makes sense because they've gone through a divorce. So it might be that they're close because of the divorce or something else. But what we know right now is that they're close. But there is a distant relationship between this dyad and this little boy. And we might be wondering why that is. It could be because these kids feel like they're connected to this parent and this child was recently adopted. We don't know. But what we know is that this dyad and this monad, one person, dyad is 2, monad is 1, feel a sense of distant relationships. But what we also have is essentially this person is a caretaker for this child. So the mom of these children is really taking care of this children. Of course, we would expect that in this relationship, but because it's there's an adoption, we might want to indicate that. We do want to indicate that. And we're also going to show a close relationship here. And this might be because of a couple of different things, maybe based on her history. She was adopted, and so she has some understanding of what he feels. What we end up having in this case is a structure of the family, but now we're starting to get some of the dynamics. Now what we also want to do is, these are divorced. Why are they divorced? We find out in the divorce that there was a lot of hostility. And this can be for lots of different reasons. But we show that there's a lot of hostility between the parents that might have spilled out into the relationships. And so we want to essentially be able to start to think about, okay, these kids are in an environment or were in an environment where there's hostility. What is the reason that these kids, or what is the things that these kids are experiencing as a result of this relationship? As we start doing this, you start to see we have questions and ideas that we want to address. And so then what we end up doing is we end up developing a hypothesis about what's going on. And this is the end product. So you see, you have essentially two parents with a hostile relationship. You have a close relationship here. You have a very close relationship here. There's a caretaker. There's 3 kids, and there is a separation between these kids. This right here gives us an understanding of the structure of the family and the dynamics. And what I simply did was write each part of this as we go along.